The battle for the real HU is our game of the week. And is this the season that Howard finally breaks the streak? We'll see. Oh, yeah. It's locked on HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darian Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with me, making Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day, every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. Just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S and ends with an S. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and now through Sunday, September 22nd, you can get 3 weeks free of NFL Sunday Ticket through YouTube and YouTube TV just by putting a $5 bet down at FanDuel.com. So go ahead and go there to make every moment more. It's all about the battle for the real HU this year. We'll look at for my everydayers, you know this, but if you're new to the party, welcome to the family. I'm very happy to have you. At the end of today's episode, we'll look at one key to victory for each of our HBCUs. In segment 2, we'll look at 2 storylines to watch. And this week, they're both Howard related, but that's not always going to be the case. Now, in segment 1, we'll be looking at 3 matchups that you need to watch in this game. And I'll kick it off with Kenny Gallup versus the Hampton offense. And I know, one player versus the Hampton offense, that almost feels a little bit like an exaggeration, but it really isn't. It really isn't when you're thinking about it, because to me, Kenny Gallup has the ability on multiple levels to wreck shop, and that's important. I reflect back to when we were doing our top 10 show. When we were doing our top 10 show, we looked at Kenny Gallup, and let's pull this graphic up, right? Because this was Gerald Huggins and myself when we were doing his top 10, and I was interviewing it. We're talking about it, right? But you see Gallup right there at number 8 for my video people. Gallup is coming in at the number 8 prospect in all of Black college football entering 2024. Now, the thing about that is I remember the physicality of Gallup that we spoke about. I remember the versatility of Gallup that we spoke about. Those are 2 of the things that really stick out to me. There was another one where we talked about defensive back stats not really jumping off the page and how you kind of got to look a little bit deeper. I don't know if that was about Gallup. That could have been about Hinton, could have been about Burgess. I know it was in that episode, but we had 3 defensive backs. 8 through 7 or 8 through 6 was defensive backs. So could have been anybody. But I think all 3 of those things come into play when discussing Kenny Gallup. Numbers don't always jump off the page, right? You got to look a little bit deeper than the numbers. You're looking at his physicality, and you're also looking at his versatility. So I left the numbers alone. I didn't need to. I just went with my eye test because I saw it against Rutgers. I saw the versatility. I saw the physicality. One of the things that G spoke about was the idea of Gallup handling tight ends. You got to be physical to handle a tight end. And when you hear him say that, you may think he's talking about going against an FCS tight end, whether that's a North Carolina Central guy, a Morgan State guy, right? Somebody in his conference. You may think he's doing that. But this was against FBS competition. Rutgers is a Power 4 player, right? A Power 4 member, I should say, excuse me. And he's going up against their tight ends. Tight ends are typically a little bit bigger on the next level. Like, you're just expecting players to have a little bit more size. So for Gallup to come in and just really handle those guys with strength, I like it. And then also tells you how he can impact the game on multiple levels. Now, if you're having him cover man-to-man on a tight end, you know he has the physicality to shut that down close to the line of scrimmage, right? Because you can't get loose when you have a guy like him at his strength pressing you that way. But then also in the run game, you saw this against Rutgers where he had a couple of plays where you're coming downhill and he's making tackles. It made me really see him as a box safety in the NFL. And I know that's like a curse word. That's like a slur, right? Like calling a player a box safety these days feels like a slur. but it's really not. I'm just speaking on how I view him as a player and where I feel like he can be best utilized. And being inside the box is, and especially with the way that people are playing these days, you're going to see more running backs. You're going to see more running backs really be effective, and I think you'll see more emphasis on the run game. So Gallup could be instantly impactful. So also against Mercy Hurst, you did in special teams. Like, he just has it all. When you think Howard defense, you think Kenny Gallup. So because he can be everywhere, he can play deep. He can play shallow. He can play in the box. He can play in the slot. He can defend your tight ends. He can use his strength against tight ends in the run game. If you go away from him and try to run away from him, he can run down the line as a backside defender. Kenny Gallup does so much on the field that I don't feel bad about saying it's Kenny Gallup versus the Hampton offense. And matter of fact, or the Hampton offense. And matter of fact, I'm just gonna take it from there and I'm gonna move on. I'm gonna move on to Howard's offense, because when I think about Howard defense, I think Kenny Gallup. When I think about Howard's offense, I think Jarrett Hunter and Eden James. But here's the thing. James has had an okay game one, an okay game two, but he had a really bad game, or excuse me, an okay game one, okay game three, and a bad game two. But he also hasn't had a lot of carries, which was the most surprising part about probably all of this. But let's pull up his stat line from the first 2 weeks, or the first and third week, because it's sandwiched in there, that bad game. So against Rutgers, he goes 8 carries, 33 yards. That's not bad. That's 4 yards a pop against FBS competition. Not a large sample size, but that's solid. And he scores a touchdown in that game. And I remember feeling like, I think I tweeted out, Eden James makes his money off of these type of games. And then Jarrett Hunter came in and it was just kind of bye-bye from there. Then you look against Mercyhurst in game two. That's bad. That's when you have 6 carries for -5 yards. And anytime you're averaging negative yards per carry, you're not happy. I don't care if it's 1 carry. I don't care if it's 2 carries. It doesn't matter. Once you get to negative yards per carry, you're upset as a running back. So 6 for -5, I highly doubt it was happy in that household afterwards. Then you look at the Morehouse game, and that's 4 for 22, 5 yards per pop, but he's not getting a lot of carries. So he's not getting a bunch of touches. Overall, that's 18 touches, man. That's 18 rushing attempts, I should say, not touches. 18 rushing attempts. Through the air, he's doing a little bit of work. He had 3 for 51 in the last game, so that's solid. You'll take it. But now you compare that to Jarrett Hunter. You compare that to Jarrett Hunter, who in last game alone had 17 carries. Against Morehouse, that was 17 for 91. Against Mercyhurst, you had 28 for 144 and 3 touchdowns. He was a really big part of that offense. Then you look at Rutgers, and against Rutgers, he came in. I do not remember Jarrett Hunter at all in the first half, but he ended up with 12 carries for 40 yards. I really feel like that was primarily, if not all, in the second half. Hunter had the second half, James had the first half, and you see who got more carries. The workload is just different to me. And this isn't to slight Hunter. I think he's a great running back. He's the preseason offensive player of the year for a reason. And the only reason I didn't think he could achieve that is simply because I thought he would have a more even split with Eden James. So I just didn't think he would have enough carries to be able to achieve it. But who knows? We'll see. Now, the last matchup that I want to look at is Malcolm Mays and Chris Zealous versus Troy Douglas. And Troy Douglas is the Howard defensive coordinator. So I know that part, you like, who is Troy Douglas? I don't remember him on the roster. That's the Howard defensive coordinator. I think it's interesting because when you look at Zealous, he has some ground touchdowns. He has 2 on each of the last 2 games. So that's 4 total. But he throws the most passes, has the most passing yards, but he has none of the passing touchdowns. Meanwhile, you look at Mays, and Mays is a guy who has, let's see, 3. Yeah, he has 3 passing touchdowns, 2 versus Morgan State and 1 versus Morehouse. In that game, he had the most passing attempts and he had the most yards. But the last 2 games, it's been Zealous on that front. He's been a more dynamic runner as well. So I think that the matchup between these two the 2 quarterbacks versus the defensive coordinator is interesting, because Larry Scott made a comment of, we just got to do what we do. It's not about what they do well. It's about what we do well. And I don't necessarily agree, but I also don't think he's giving his game plan. So I'm not mad about it. But at the end of the day, that defense coordinator is going to have to plan for different strengths. And Scott alluded to this. Like, I don't want to make it seem like I'm criticizing Scott, or if I'm trying to make it seem like he is misleading. I think he's keeping some things close to the vest, simply because I'm not going to give my game plan at the weekly presser. I'm just not doing that. Right. So all in all, you're going to have to defend these 2 quarterbacks. You're going to have to. You're going to have to be prepared for both of them. They've been doing this forever. I just don't know how it's going to work. I'm not a big fan of it, and I'll talk about that in segment 3 because it kind of leads to my key to victory for Hampton. But you're going to rock with this 2-quarterback system for quite a while. Howard defensively has to be ready to take care of it. You have to be ready for the different strengths. You have to be ready for this guy's legs. You have to be ready for this guy's arm. You have to be ready for, you just have to be ready for everything that could come to play. And that's the way that I view it. It does make preparation a little bit harder because you have to prepare for 2 different guys at the quarterback position. But yeah, now let's get into these storylines. Howard's looking to break the streak. There's no bigger storyline than that. And that's what we're leading and kind of carrying the majority of the segment with as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by Robinhood. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need the silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Where Robinhood Gold allows you to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 5% APY on uninvested cash, receive unlimited 1% deposit bonuses, and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product specific disclosures, visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risks. Rates may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this the first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, check out Locked On Saints and Locked On Eagles. Both teams have a lot going on going into their Sunday matchup. So go ahead and check out both of those shows, both quality individuals running them. Now, we're going into our storylines to watch in the Battle of the Real HU. And I think it's quite clear, right? You have to look at it from this perspective. The Real HU. Howard has not won that title since 2014. The last time that Howard won that title, the Hampton Pirates were in the MEAC. The last time that Howard was able to come in and say, yeah, this is what I do, it's just been too long. But you know what? I'm not going to knock you because I was there too. I was there until 3 weeks ago. So is this the year? Is there something in the air? Because it feels as if streaks are meant to be broken right now. Texas Southern did it. I came in here at a freaking victory lap when TSU knocked off PV. It felt good. I want you to have that feeling too. I don't know if it'll be this year. I mean, I'm just saying. I want you to have that feeling too in the most objective way possible. Not rooting, but it felt good. Maybe there's something in the air because, quite frankly, Howard was the better team last year. They should have won last year. Maybe this is the season. You know who else should have won last year? TSU. Maybe you just got to get real close and feel like this. You got to let one slip through your fingers before you learn how to really use your grip. Maybe that's what it is. I see a lot of parallels between Hampton and Howard and then TSU and PV. I see a lot of parallels within that. Not quite the name, but you know, the rivalry being kind of one-sided as of recent. You felt like you should have won the last matchup, but you let it go. You really blamed yourself for that. Like, dang, you should have got it done. I don't know if Howard has the same pessimism that I know existed around the TSU fan base because there was no real belief that they could get it done. I don't think that Howard has that. But at the same time, outside of that one factor, there's a lot of parallels between these two rivalries and how they've gone. I have good news. I have good news for the Bison fan, and that's that TSU broke the streak. And I think that that's kind of like you know how they say Cat Williams opened the portal of negativity in 2024? Maybe TSU opened up the portal of broken streaks. I like that. It's not a shocker if you win. You should have won last year. You had the game in hand, and the fourth quarter happened, and we'll get into that in our key to victory. That's a little bit of a teaser. And in our segment 3, we'll be looking at Howard and the fact that they have to play all 4 quarters. But Coach Scott called this a pride game. And I don't know why, but I never looked at rivalry games as pride games. Just never did. I probably should have, because that's definitely a component of it that plays a part. But I've never looked at it as, look, you play for pride. I've looked at bragging rights. I've looked at like just to have one up. And I think pride is a hidden component of those things, but I don't necessarily know if I would have considered it a pride moment when it comes to TSU versus PV. But that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. I just wouldn't have called it that. Um, but yeah, so you're looking at this game to me. You're looking at this game to me as one that boils down to how much do you want it? You got to want it more than the other person. And when you get into rivalry games, a lot of time that's what it takes. In that fourth quarter, Hampton wanted it more. Hampton went and got it. How good you are goes out the window. All of those things. Who's the better team? It goes away. It matters to a degree because you still have to play with the talent that's on the field. But a lot of times, anything can happen. I look at that in divisional games on the professional ranks. I look at that as rivalry games on the collegiate ranks. That's just the way that I look at it. But as Howard is trying to earn this title back, who's going to be starting for them? Is it going to be Jay-Sean Scroggins or is it going to be Jalen Tolbert? Now, Scroggins was out with an injury last week, which means Tolbert got that start against Morehouse. And Larry Scott likes what he saw, but he's always liked what he saw. It's not like Tolbert is new to the team or anything of the sort. Let's read off his stat line from this game versus Morehouse. So he went 23 of 41, one interception, but he had 4 touchdowns and 267 yards. Now that's what I'm liking to hear, right? You want to you don't want to have that turnover, but are we really complaining about one turnover, one interception when you have 4 touchdowns on the day? I'm not. But who's going to be the starter? That is the second storyline that you need to watch out for. When it comes down to Howard, they like Scroggins, they like Tolbert, they feel like they have 2 starting quarterbacks, but they know who their starting quarterback is. It's not a situation like Hampton where, oh, we like Mays, we like Zealous, we're going to play them both. No, they're playing Scroggins. As long as he's healthy enough to play, I expect it to be Scroggins. And when he's in a game, they're not going to do this whole back and forth thing. They're going to say Scroggins is our starting quarterback, and we will move appropriately from there. That's simple. It's not difficult. It's not difficult. You can make a decision. You can make a decision. You can say which quarterback you want. It's not hard to do. That's how I talk in real life, bro. I do stupid stuff like just start singing in real life, but it felt right on the show. It felt right on the show because I'm really not a fan. I'm really not a fan of the 2 quarterback system. But anyway, who's going to start? Is it going to be Scroggins? Is it going to be Tolbert? I think that if it's Tolbert, you have to understand that the stakes have now jumped for you. The stakes have now jumped for you. I know you've been around for a minute, so maybe you feel a little bit more comfortable. What is he, a red shirt? Oh, he's a redshirt senior. I don't know. I thought he was like a redshirt sophomore or a junior at most, but he's a redshirt senior. So maybe those nerves don't really get to him. But this isn't Morehouse. This is Hampton. This is a completely different ball game. So if he plays, you have to kind of be ready for that. With Scroggins, you had the Mercyhurst game. You had the Rutgers game. Like, I don't think facing Hampton is going to be a moment where it's like, oh, I got to gather myself. Maybe the heated rivalry aspect of it, but not anything more than that, right? But let's get into our keys to victory, because with Howard and when it comes to Hampton, they're very clear for me on what they need to do and what I want them to do if they're going to win this game. So let's break that down as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors, and eBay Motors is the only place that I will send anybody with any sort of car problem, any sort of car improvements, no matter what it is. If you want to go ahead and fix up your aesthetic, maybe you want to get a different color seats in the car. Maybe you want to get some different floor mats, and it's just something like that, but they look a little bit better, right? You want to get something fixed up, your alternator. You want to get your radiator. I don't know whatever it could be that you need to fix. Then you will go ahead and go to eBay Motors. It's that easy because eBay Motors is here to take care of your ride or die. Nobody wants to be on the highway smoking up a storm. Nobody wants to do that. We want you to be able to ride in peace. We want you to be able to ride in comfort. We want you to ride calmly, knowing that you're not going to have any issues. With the parts from eBay Motors, that's guaranteed for you, right? eBay Motors guarantee fit. You put your car into the My Garage section, you know that they're gonna fit for you. If they don't, you get your money back guaranteed. And once they fit and get onto your car, now you know what to do. You're riding in peace, you're riding in comfort, you're riding in calm. So go ahead and go to ebaymotors.com and take care of your ride or die. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. And FanDuel is the official sports book of the Locked On Podcast Network. Now, here's my thing. I don't care if it's the NFL. Maybe that's not your cup of tea, right? Maybe it's collegiate football. There you go. But whatever you do by Sunday, you need to put down a $5 bet, because with a $5 bet, you'll get 3 weeks free of NFL Sunday ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV just by putting down a $5 bet. Go to FanDuel.com/locked on. It's simple. Go get yourself a free 3-week trial of NFL Sunday ticket. And I'm looking towards the next 3 weeks being crazy because it's the beginning of the season and we're trying to see where each person is. But you know what? Maybe that's not your selling point. Still, NFL, college football, MLB, WNBA playoff starts this Sunday. Everything you could ask for is on FanDuel.com. So go ahead and go there to make yourself a little bit of money, even if you don't like the 3 weeks free. 3 weeks free of NFL Sunday ticket. Go to FanDuel.com/locked on to make every moment more. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked on HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day, making it all the way to segment 3. And I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Thank you. We have our key to victory, and we're going to keep it simple for you. Howard needs to play all 4 quarters. I know that that's typical coach speak. You got to play for 60 minutes. You got to play all 4 quarters. No taking plays off. I know. I know. But I don't think it's cliche to say that here. I don't think that it's typical to say that here. In my opinion, this is something that needs to be preached. This is something that needs to be discussed. And Larry Scott spoke about it in a weekly presser with the MEAC, right? Howard hasn't played 4 quarters in this game in a while. When's the last time that you feel like Howard played 4 quarters in the Battle of the Real HU? It wasn't last season. Wasn't the year before that. Wasn't the year before that. You can't lose the 4th quarter spectacularly. You can't lose any quarter spectacularly. You ain't got to win every quarter. It'd be nice if you did, but you don't have to win every quarter. But you can't lose 14 points, right? Like you just can't afford it in a game like this. But especially you have to learn how to finish. Let's go through a couple of these games. Let's go through some of these 4th quarters. So in 2023, the score was 34-21. Howard at the beginning of the 4th quarter, right? I think Howard scored 10, 15 seconds into the 4th quarter. So 34-21, very early. Then Hampton puts up 2 touchdowns and they get both of the extra points. So now they end up winning this game 35-34. You can't allow that. That's not finishing. You play really good into that point. You were supposed to win. You have to finish. And I don't say this to be an Aggie because trust me, Texas Southern did the same thing in 2023. Howard in 2022 was down 21-6 at the top of the 4th. They got scoring. They scored 22 points in that quarter, but Hampton only had to score 10 to make sure they came out victorious. You put yourself down 21-16 going into the 4th quarter. I would be saying the same thing to Hampton had they not came back, but because you come back, ain't nothing to talk about. Right? There's nothing to talk about there. But with Howard, you're down 15 points. You can't spot the rival 15 points going into the 4th quarter because now you're down 2 scores, assuming you get a 2-point conversion. Those aren't always the easiest to come by. So now you're looking at 3 scores that you were possibly down. That's 2022. In 2021, Hampton had a 21-point lead in a 21-point 3rd quarter. Howard won the 4th quarter, but it's too late, too little. It's too late, too little, man. When you lose a quarter by 21 points, there's no making it up for that. These are trends. 2 out of the last 3 games, they were trying to play catch up, or they were trying to make up for a moment. Like, you cannot lose a quarter in spectacular fashion in this game. And over the last 3 matchups, Howard has done that, whether it be a 21-point 3rd quarter, whether it be a 2-touchdown 4th quarter in the last 4 minutes of the 4th quarter. You can't afford these type of things. You can't afford these type of moments. Now, Hampton run the football. Elijah Burris is just him. Last year, he had 136 yards on just 7 attempts, had a 93-yard touchdown, but even without that, he was still averaging 6 yards per carry. Right. So you're looking at what? That's 43. So you're looking at 7 yards per carry on the other ones that isn't the 93-yard touchdown. That boy was good. Right. And here's the thing. He was really effective on a limited amount of carries. He's not limiting those carries this year. Don't expect that. Expect him to be a 20 carry guy. When you have 2 quarterbacks, I will never like it. I will never believe in it. And I will consistently wait for it to fail. I won't hope for it to fail. But it's my belief that eventually You will have to commit to one guy. It just will not work forever. But as long as it's going on, I would want my running game to make it to where it doesn't fail. I would want my running game to make it to where I'm not in a situation where they can dictate what I have to do. I can put out whoever I want to. Let it be 3rd and 4, 3rd and 3. Never put me in a situation where I'm far back, because when I have two quarterbacks that I'm using, Darian Gray, coach mouth of the South, wouldn't necessarily trust either one of them. So I want to have it to where I have my running game being my heartbeat and then my quarterback kind of adding to it. So that's the way that I look at it. Elijah Burris is going to be a big deal. I want him to run the rock. I want him to be good. And you also have Robinson, who added 2 touchdowns on the day against Morehouse last week. We'll see if he's able to continue that. He only had 11 carries for 30-something yards, so it wasn't a boom in rushing yards, but it was 2 touchdowns on the day. If he can get that end zone rocking, different conversation. But Elijah Burris is the guy to watch. He is the man, right? So we'll be back on Monday to discuss the Battle of the Real HU. I don't know what game we'll attach to it. I doubt we'll do 3 segments. We've been doing more 2 segments and 1 additional one from a different game as of lately, just so we can hit all of the hot spots. But it kind of depends on how the other action goes around the HBCU landscape. But we'll see on Monday. In the meantime, between time, till next time we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.